a Lakota warrior caught between his tribe and a missionary. His choice changed two peoples forever. The grass swayed gently in the wind, and the sun painted golden colors across the horizon. The Lakota people, his family, and his tribe all lived in close connection with the land. For them, every hill, river, and tree had a story. Every sunrise brought a lesson, and every night the stars spoke to those who listened. From a young age, Tasanka learned to listen carefully. He watched the elders as they told stories around the fire. They spoke of great warriors, of battles fought to protect the people, and of the spirits that guided them. He learned that courage was not only about strength, but about wisdom, patience, and respect. Tasanka's parents were proud of their son. His father was a skilled hunter and warrior, known for his sharp eyes and steady aim. His mother was wise and gentle, a healer and storyteller, who taught him about plants, medicine, and the sacred traditions of their people. Every morning, Tasanka would wake up to the smell of the fire and the sound of horses stirring in the camp. He would help his mother prepare simple meals, learning the value of hard work and care. His father would take him on long walks across the plains, pointing out the tracks of deer, buffalo, and other creatures. "The land speaks to those who pay attention," his father would say. "If you listen, it will teach you everything you need to know." By the time Tasanka was 10, he was already strong and quick. He could ride a horse with ease, run across the plains without tiring, and track animals almost like a shadow following its prey. But his greatest strength was his mind. He asked questions about everything he saw. Why do the birds fly in that pattern? Why does the river bend in that way? Why do the seasons change as they do? His parents sometimes laughed at his curiosity, sometimes admired it. In their culture, learning came from experience, from watching, listening, and participating. Tasanka was a fast learner. He watched the hunters and warriors, the dancers and singers, and tried to remember every detail. Life in the camp was simple but full of meaning. Each day had its tasks: hunting, gathering, teaching the younger children, and preparing for the next season. But the Lakota also valued joy. Evenings were often filled with music and dancing, drumming and singing. Tasanka loved these moments. He loved the rhythm of the drum, the stories in the songs, and the laughter of children playing around the fire. He felt a deep sense of belonging. He knew that he was part of something bigger than himself. The tribe was his family, the land was his home, and the traditions were his guide. As Tasanka grew older, he began to understand the responsibilities that came with his gifts. He could fight, he could hunt, he could lead, but he also needed to understand people. He observed how elders made decisions, how hunters worked together, and how families cared for each other. He learned that leadership was not about power or fame, but about listening, protecting, and guiding others. This understanding made him respected by his peers. Even though he was still young, other warriors would seek his advice, knowing that his mind was sharp and his heart was true. However, the world around Tasanka was beginning to change. Beyond the endless plains, there were new people arriving. White settlers were coming, and with them, stories of different ways of living, different languages, and different beliefs. Sometimes traders would pass through, bringing cloth, tools, and strange objects that Tasanka had never seen. He was curious about these things, but he was also cautious. The elders spoke of broken promises, of land taken, and of dangers that came with outsiders. Tasanka began to understand that his life, and the life of his people, was about to face challenges they had never known before. Despite these changes, Tasanka felt a strong pride in his identity. He loved the way the tribe celebrated life, the way they respected the earth, and the way every person had a place and purpose. He trained in the ways of the warrior, learning to handle weapons, to ride quickly, and to make decisions in moments of danger. But he also learned the quieter skills: how to read the stars, how to understand the wind, and how to speak in a way that could calm a conflict before it began. His balance of strength and thought made him unique among the young warriors. Tasanka's connection to the land and the spirits was also growing. He would often sit alone on a hill, watching the sun rise or set, feeling the wind on his face, and listening to the whispers of nature. He believed that everything in life was connected. The animals, the rivers, the trees, and even the people were part of a larger story. This belief made him thoughtful and humble. He did not rush into action. He considered his choices carefully, knowing that even a small action could ripple across his life and the lives of those around him. As he entered his teenage years, Tasanka began to take on more responsibilities within the tribe. He accompanied older warriors on hunts, learning not just how to track animals, but how to protect the community during these journeys. He participated in sacred ceremonies, learning songs, dances, and rituals that honored their ancestors. He was proud to wear the traditional clothing and paint his face for important events. Each step taught him more about honor, respect, and the weight of tradition. But even in these years of learning and growth, Tasanka felt something stirring inside him. It was a mix of curiosity and concern. He had heard stories from travelers and traders about the world beyond the plains. He had heard whispers of settlers who claimed lands, of armies moving west, and of changes that might threaten everything he loved. Yet he also felt a spark of hope. He wondered if there could be a way to protect his people while learning from the new world. Could there be a way to bring knowledge without losing identity? These questions often kept him awake at night, staring at the stars, thinking about the future. Tasanka's parents noticed this in him. His father would sometimes speak quietly. "You think too much for your age, but that may be your greatest gift." His mother would add, "Remember, son, strength comes from the heart as much as the body. Listen, observe, and act with care." Their words stayed with him, guiding his steps as he moved closer to adulthood. By the time he reached 17, Tasanka had become a respected young warrior. He had proven himself in hunts, in protecting the camp, and in understanding the needs of the people. He had friends among the warriors, teachers among the elders, and a deep bond with his family. But the world beyond the tribe was growing closer each day. Settlers were moving further into the plains. News of the U.S. government's treaties and actions reached the tribe. The elders spoke of caution, of preparing for conflict, and of the importance of unity. Tasanka listened carefully, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. And yet, he remained hopeful. Tasanka believed that wisdom and courage could guide him, that understanding and patience could help his people navigate the challenges ahead. He did not yet know how soon those challenges would arrive, but he felt ready to face them. The plains had taught him strength, the tribe had taught him honor, and the stars had taught him patience. The coming days would test all that he had learned. As he lay under the night sky, Tasanka made a silent promise to himself. He would protect his people, honor their traditions, and face whatever changes came with courage and wisdom. He did not yet know that soon, a new presence would arrive in his life, a presence that would challenge everything he believed, and that would force him to make choices no young warrior had ever faced before. But in this quiet moment, surrounded by the whispers of the wind and the songs of the stars, Tasanka felt ready. The plains, the tribe, and the spirits of his ancestors were with him, and he knew that his journey had only just begun. The seasons changed, and the winds brought new faces to the plains. One morning, as Tasanka rode across the rolling hills with a group of young warriors, he noticed a small group of strangers approaching. They carried bundles, wore different clothing, and spoke in voices that were soft and strange to the ears of the Lakota. Their skin was pale, their eyes curious, and their movements careful, almost cautious. The elders in the camp immediately recognized that these were not traders or hunters, they were missionaries. Among them was a man named Father Elias. He was tall and gentle, with kind eyes that seemed to see more than what was in front of him. He carried books, small tools, and supplies meant to teach, heal, and guide. His mission was clear. He wanted to help the Lakota people learn about the world beyond the plains, about reading, writing, and the teachings of his religion. But he also came with care, aware that imposing his ways could harm the lives of the people he wished to help. Father Elias had traveled far, guided by a belief that knowledge and understanding could save lives, even in the most distant lands. Tasunka first encountered Father Elias during a tribal council. The elders had gathered in a circle, the fire in the center glowing as the shadows danced across their faces. The missionary spoke respectfully, explaining his intentions and offering assistance. He promised no harm, only guidance. Some of the elders listened with suspicion. They remembered the stories of broken promises, of lands taken and lives changed by outsiders. But others, especially the younger members of the tribe, were curious. They saw the possibility of learning new skills, gaining knowledge, and perhaps finding ways to protect themselves from the changes sweeping across their lands. Tasunka was both cautious and intrigued. He studied Father Elias closely. The man spoke in a calm voice, never raising it in anger or frustration. His eyes showed patience and understanding, and he seemed genuinely interested in the Lakota way of life. Tasunka noticed that Father Elias did not dismiss the tribe's traditions. He asked questions, listened to stories, and respected the ceremonies. Yet he also spoke of other ways, of letters, books, and distant lands. He described a world beyond the plains, a world that was vast, complex, and often dangerous. Tasunka felt a strange pull toward this knowledge. He was proud of his heritage, but he also sensed that learning about the outside world might be necessary for the survival of his people. The days that followed were filled with observation and quiet meetings. Tasunka would watch Father Elias interact with the children, teaching them to read symbols and letters, showing them how to use tools that could make life easier. The missionary also treated the sick, tended to injuries, and spoke of ideas that were foreign but fascinating. Tasunka noticed the way the children responded. They were eager to learn, their eyes wide with curiosity. The elders were wary, but they could not deny that the missionary's presence had some benefits. Tasunka decided to approach Father Elias in private. He wanted to understand more, to see if this man's intentions were genuine. The meeting took place near a quiet stream, where the water flowed gently over smooth stones. Tasunka observed the way Father Elias moved, the care he took in every action. "You are a brave young man," the missionary said softly. "I have heard much about your courage and wisdom. I wish to teach you, not to change you, but to help you understand the world beyond these plains." Tasunka listened, feeling both curiosity and caution. "I honor my people, my family, and our traditions," he said. "I cannot ignore them, but I also see that the world is changing. How can we protect ourselves if we do not understand these changes?" Father Elias nodded. "Knowledge is not the enemy of tradition," he replied. "It can be a shield, a tool to help you guide your people safely, but you must choose carefully what to accept and what to keep sacred." Over the next several weeks, Tasunka began to spend more time with Father Elias. He learned to recognize letters, to read simple words, and even to write his name. He marveled at the way knowledge could open doors to understanding. He also learned about maps, numbers, and distant lands. Each lesson made him think, made him question, and made him realize that the world was far bigger than the plains he had always known. Yet, Tasunka never forgot his responsibilities. He continued to participate fully in tribal life. He hunted with the warriors, led ceremonies, and protected his people from danger. He balanced his time carefully, ensuring that no one could accuse him of abandoning his roots. But he also felt the growing tension within himself. Every lesson learned, every new idea encountered, made the challenge of choosing a path even more difficult. Could he bridge two worlds, or would he be forced to choose one over the other? The other young warriors began to notice the changes in Tasunka. Some were impressed, admiring his ability to learn quickly. Others were suspicious, fearing that he was being influenced by the outsider. Gossip spread quietly through the camp, and some elders questioned his loyalty. Tasunka remained calm, knowing that actions, not words, would define him. He continued to serve his tribe faithfully, proving that learning from Father Elias did not make him less Lakota. One day, a small crisis occurred. A group of children had wandered near the edge of the camp and encountered a dangerous animal. Tasunka acted quickly, using both his traditional skills and some knowledge he had learned from Father Elias. He guided the children to safety, using strategies that combined old and new wisdom. The elders who witnessed his actions were impressed. They saw that Tasunka's curiosity and learning did not weaken his loyalty. It strengthened his ability to protect the tribe. Despite this, not all were convinced. Some elders warned Tasunka to be careful. "The world outside is dangerous," they said. "Not all who speak kindly have good intentions. Do not forget who you are, and do not let these outsiders change your heart." Tasunka listened respectfully. He promised to honor his heritage, to respect the elders, and to never act without considering the consequences. But inside, he knew that the lessons he was learning were necessary. The world was changing, and understanding it could save lives. Father Elias also faced challenges. Some in his group of missionaries questioned his methods, worrying that respecting the tribe's traditions would slow their work. But Father Elias remained firm. He believed that trust and respect were more powerful than force or persuasion. He saw in Tasunka a unique spirit, a young warrior who could navigate both worlds, who could act as a bridge between the Lakota and the outsiders. He hoped that Tasunka would one day make choices that could protect lives and create understanding where conflict might otherwise arise. As the weeks passed, a quiet friendship developed between the warrior and the missionary. They shared stories, experiences, and insights. Tasunka spoke of the plains, of the spirits, and of the ancestors who had guided his people for generations. Father Elias spoke of distant lands, of books, and of ideas that were new but meaningful. They learned from each other, building trust and mutual respect. The bond was not simple, it was fragile, tested by suspicion, tradition, and the looming presence of change. But it was genuine, and it began to shape the decisions Tasunka would soon face. At night, Tasunka would often think about the future. He would sit under the stars, just as he had as a boy, feeling the wind on his face and listening to the whispers of the land. He wondered what path he should take. Could he embrace the lessons of the missionary without losing his identity? Could he find a way to protect his people from the dangers of the changing world while preserving the traditions that defined them? The questions were heavy, but he did not shy away from them. He felt a deep responsibility, knowing that the choices he made would affect not only his life, but the lives of everyone he loved. The arrival of Father Elias was only the beginning. Tasunka sensed that greater challenges were coming. The settlers, the government, and the changing world would soon place demands on the tribe that no one could ignore. Yet, he also felt a spark of hope. Perhaps understanding and wisdom could provide a path forward. Perhaps a young warrior could learn from both worlds and help his people survive with dignity. Tasunka's days became a careful balance of learning and honoring tradition, of curiosity and loyalty. Each lesson with Father Elias brought new questions, new insights, and new challenges. Each hunt, each ceremony, and each act of protection reinforced his identity as a Lakota warrior. And each night under the stars reminded him that the land, the spirits, and the ancestors were always watching, guiding him with quiet strength. As the chapter of his youth continued, Tasunka realized that his life had already begun to change. The plains were the same, the winds blew as they always had, but the world beyond was now very near. He felt both excitement and fear, hope and uncertainty. He knew that soon, he would face decisions that no young warrior had ever faced before, choices that could shape not only his future but the future of his people and the strangers who had come to their land. In these quiet moments, Tasunka made a silent promise. He would learn, he would observe, and he would act with care. He would honor his tribe, respect the land, and seek understanding with the outsiders. And when the time came to make a choice, he would do so with courage, wisdom, and a heart that held both worlds within it. Tasunka's life had grown more complex. The presence of Father Elias, the missionary, had opened new possibilities, but it had also introduced challenges that weighed heavily on his young mind. He found himself caught between two worlds: the world of his tribe, with its ancient traditions, ceremonies, and sacred ways, and the world of the outsiders, with their books, tools, and promises of knowledge and protection. He could not deny the pull of learning from Father Elias, yet he also felt the strong ties of loyalty to his people, his family, and the land that had shaped him. Each day presented new lessons, not only from the missionary but from the elders and warriors of his tribe. Tasunka learned that being a warrior was not just about strength or skill with weapons. It was also about understanding people, reading situations, and making choices that could save lives. He observed the elders as they held councils, listened to stories of past battles, and guided the young ones with patience and wisdom. He saw the subtle ways they taught respect and honor, showing that leadership was earned through service and careful thought rather than force. At the same time, Tasunka spent hours with Father Elias, learning to read simple words, write letters, and understand the maps and tools the missionary brought. Each lesson made him think deeply about the world beyond the plains. He began to understand that knowledge could be a powerful tool, one that could help his tribe survive the changes approaching their lands. He also realized that learning did not mean abandoning his identity. It could strengthen his ability to protect and guide his people. The balance between these two worlds was delicate, and Tasunka often felt the tension inside him. He wanted to honor the traditions of the Lakota while embracing the wisdom he could gain from Father Elias. This internal struggle sometimes left him restless at night, staring at the stars and listening to the whispers of the wind. He knew that his people depended on him, and he also felt a growing sense of responsibility toward the outsiders who had entered their world with peaceful intentions. The tribe began to notice the changes in Tasunka. Some of the young warriors admired his intelligence and curiosity, seeing in him a potential leader who could navigate the challenges of a changing world. Others were suspicious, worried that he was being influenced by the outsider and could lose sight of his duties to the tribe. Gossip traveled quietly through the camp, and some elders expressed concern. Tasunka understood their caution, yet he remained patient, knowing that actions would always speak louder than words. One afternoon, a serious problem arose that tested Tasunka's ability to bridge these worlds. A herd of buffalo, essential for the tribe's food and resources, had wandered into a dangerous area near a settler's encampment. The young warriors knew that approaching could be risky, but the tribe depended on the herd for survival. Tasunka stepped forward to lead the hunt. He used the traditional skills he had learned from his father and elders, tracking the herd and planning the safest path. Yet he also applied some lessons from Father Elias, using careful observation and strategic thinking to avoid unnecessary danger. The hunt was a success. Tasunka guided the herd safely back to the tribe without conflict, earning the respect of both the warriors and the elders. They saw that his intelligence, courage, and ability to think beyond the ordinary made him an exceptional young warrior. Still, the elders reminded him that wisdom must always be tempered with humility and respect. "You have done well," one elder said. "But remember, the plains are alive, and the spirits watch every choice you make. Never act without thinking of the consequences." Even as Tasunka gained respect, he faced challenges from within. Some members of the tribe questioned his growing relationship with Father Elias. They worried that the missionary's influence could change Tasunka's loyalty or values. They whispered that the outsider could never understand the sacred ways of the Lakota, and that anyone who tried to learn from him risked losing their identity. Tasunka heard these warnings but did not let them sway him. He understood that learning did not mean abandoning who he was. Instead, he saw it as a way to protect the tribe, to use knowledge as a shield without compromising tradition. During this time, Tasunka also began to notice the subtle ways that Father Elias respected the tribe's culture. The missionary never imposed his beliefs. He asked questions, listened to stories, and joined in ceremonies with humility. He treated everyone with kindness, helping the sick and teaching the children, but always with the awareness that he was a guest in their world. Tasunka admired this respect and realized that not all outsiders were a threat. Some, like Father Elias, could become allies if approached with care and wisdom. One evening, Tasunka found himself reflecting on his dual responsibilities. He sat by the riverbank, watching the water flow over smooth stones, thinking about the future. How can I protect my people while embracing these lessons? He asked himself silently. He remembered the words of his father, "The land speaks to those who listen," and the words of Father Elias, "Knowledge is not the enemy of tradition." Tasunka realized that he must find a way to blend both, to become a bridge between two worlds and to guide his people through the uncertain times ahead. The challenges of leadership became even more apparent when a neighboring tribe threatened the plains. Conflicts between tribes were rare but serious, and the elders had to act carefully to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Tasunka participated in the councils, listening to the strategies and concerns of the elders. He noticed that some warriors were quick to act, ready to fight without considering long-term consequences. Tasunka spoke cautiously, offering ideas that combined traditional strategies with careful observation and planning, ideas he had learned in part from Father Elias. His suggestions were met with mixed reactions. Some elders appreciated his insight, recognizing his ability to think beyond the immediate danger. Others remained cautious, wary of any influence that came from the outside. Tasunka remained patient, understanding that trust must be earned. He continued to prove himself through action, demonstrating that his loyalty to the tribe remained unshakable. As the threat from the neighboring tribe grew, Tasunka began to realize that knowledge alone was not enough. He needed to understand people, their fears, motivations, and desires. He observed the younger warriors, noting who could be persuaded and who could be guided. He watched the elders, learning the subtleties of diplomacy, compromise, and leadership. He also considered the role of the settlers and the missionaries, understanding that their presence could not be ignored in the decisions that would affect the tribe's future. Father Elias continued to support Tasunka, offering advice and perspective without demanding obedience. "You carry a heavy responsibility," he said one day as they walked along the edge of the camp. "Your choices will shape lives. Listen to your heart but also use your mind. Wisdom is the combination of both." Tasunka listened carefully, feeling the weight of the words. He knew that one day he would face a choice that could define the future of his people and possibly even change the course of history. The days turned into weeks, and Tasunka grew stronger in both skill and understanding. He continued to hunt, protect the camp, and participate in ceremonies, but he also spent time learning and thinking. He practiced reading and writing, mapped the surrounding lands, and discussed strategy and diplomacy with Father Elias. His ability to navigate both worlds became increasingly clear. He could speak with settlers and missionaries without losing respect for his tribe, and he could lead his people without ignoring the lessons of the outside world. Despite his growing abilities, Tasunka never allowed pride to guide him. He remained humble, aware that every action could have consequences. He sought advice from elders, listened to the needs of the tribe, and weighed the potential outcomes of each decision. He understood that leadership was not about power, but about service, protection, and guidance. The more he learned, the more he realized that his choices would carry weight far beyond his own life. The tension within the camp continued to build. Some members of the tribe still questioned Tasunka's loyalty. Some elders worried about the influence of the outsider, while some young warriors were curious but uncertain. Tasunka faced criticism and praise in equal measure, yet he remained steady. He knew that his role was not to please everyone, but to act in the best interest of the tribe, blending tradition and knowledge to ensure survival and prosperity. As he sat one evening by the fire, listening to the songs of the elders and watching the young children play, Tasunka understood that his journey was far from over. The challenges ahead would test his courage, his wisdom, and his loyalty. He knew that he would soon face choices that no young warrior had ever faced before, choices that could determine the future of the tribe and even influence the outsiders who had entered their world. Tasunka's heart was both heavy and hopeful. He loved his people, his family, and the land that had nurtured him. But he also felt the pull of knowledge, the promise of understanding, and the possibility of guiding his tribe through the storm of change. He realized that the world was becoming more complex, and survival required more than strength alone. It required wisdom, patience, and the ability to navigate between two very different worlds. With this understanding, Tasunka prepared himself for what was to come. He trained, learned, and observed, always seeking balance. He knew that the decisions ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that he had the courage, skill, and heart to face them. The plains, the stars, and the spirits of his ancestors were with him, guiding him quietly and surely. He felt ready to take the next step, even though he did not yet know what that step would demand. The winds of change were no longer gentle whispers. They had grown into strong gusts that swept across the plains, carrying news of danger and uncertainty. The U.S. Army was moving closer to the lands of the Lakota. Reports reached the tribe that soldiers were taking land, forcing other tribes to move, and demanding obedience to rules that were foreign and often unfair. The elders called an emergency council, and the camp filled with tension, the fire at the center of the circle casting long shadows across anxious faces. Every member of the tribe knew that the days ahead would be filled with difficult choices, and no decision could be made lightly. Tasunka sat among the warriors, listening to the debate with a heavy heart. Some elders spoke of resistance, of taking up arms to defend their lands and honor. "We cannot give up what is ours," one elder said, his voice firm with determination. "Our ancestors fought for this land, and we must do the same." Others argued for caution and negotiation, warning that fighting the army could bring destruction, bloodshed, and suffering to the entire tribe. The voices rose and fell like the wind, carrying fear, anger, and hope in equal measure. Tasunka felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had always been a protector, a learner, and a thinker, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The lives of his people, their traditions, and the land they loved depended on the choices made in this council. He thought of his father's lessons about courage and patience, of his mother's teachings about wisdom and care, and of Father Elia's guidance about understanding and balance. Every piece of knowledge he had gathered seemed to converge in this single moment. The young warriors looked to Tasunka, aware of his skill, intelligence, and ability to see beyond the immediate danger. Some whispered that he could guide the tribe through the storm of uncertainty. Tasunka listened carefully, weighing every argument, considering every possible outcome. He realized that the traditional ways of resistance might honor the ancestors, but could also bring devastating loss. At the same time, negotiating with the outsiders might protect lives, but it could be seen as a betrayal of tradition. The choice was not simple, and he knew that whichever path he took would be remembered for generations. In the days that followed, Tasunka began preparing. He met privately with Father Elias, seeking advice on strategy, communication, and diplomacy. The missionary offered insight, not commands. "Your people respect you because you understand them," Father Elias said. "Your strength comes from your heart and your mind. You must speak with honesty but also with care. Sometimes the right choice is not the one that seems brave, but the one that preserves life and honor." Tasunka listened intently, absorbing every word. He knew that he would have to use every lesson he had learned, from both the tribe and the outsider, to navigate the crisis ahead. Tasunka also consulted with trusted members of the tribe, those who shared his vision of balance and survival. He listened to their fears, their hopes, and their ideas. He considered the youngest warriors, the mothers and children, and even the elders who had opposed the missionary's presence. Every voice mattered because the choice would affect everyone. Tasunka realized that leadership was not just about making decisions. It was about understanding people, anticipating reactions, and finding a path that minimized harm while honoring the past. The army's arrival drew near, and tension in the camp grew with each passing day. Scouts reported the movement of troops, and the elders debated the possibility of conflict. Some young warriors grew restless, eager for battle, while others feared the consequences. Tasunka understood their emotions. He had felt the pride and courage that came with the thought of defending the land, but he also felt the fear and uncertainty that came with the possibility of losing everything. He knew that any rash decision could lead to tragedy. One morning, as the sun rose over the plains, Tasunka made a choice. He would speak at the tribal council, offering a path that combined courage, wisdom, and understanding. The elders, warriors, and even the children gathered, sensing that a critical moment had arrived. Tasunka stood tall, his eyes calm and his voice steady. He spoke of honor, of tradition, and of the need to protect life. He explained that resistance might preserve pride but could bring unnecessary suffering, while negotiation could safeguard the tribe and allow them to maintain their identity. He suggested a compromise, a strategy that involved dialogue with the army, careful planning, and the use of knowledge he had gained from Father Elias to communicate effectively. The council was silent for a long moment. The elders looked at each other, weighing the wisdom of Tasunka's words against the fear in their hearts. Some warriors nodded in agreement, recognizing the practicality of his approach, while others frowned, uncertain if negotiation could ever be enough. Tasunka felt the tension in the air but remained composed. He knew that leadership required not only courage but also patience and conviction. He waited, allowing his words to settle, giving space for reflection. Finally, an elder spoke. "Tasunka, your words are thoughtful," he said slowly. "You have considered both our traditions and the dangers we face. Your heart is with the tribe and your mind is clear. If we follow your guidance, we must trust in your wisdom." The council murmured in agreement, and for the first time in days, a sense of cautious hope filled the camp. Tasunka knew that the decision was not final, but it was a step toward survival and understanding. Tasunka then took action. He arranged a meeting with the army leaders, using the skills he had learned from Father Elias to communicate clearly and respectfully. He spoke of the tribe's history, their connection to the land, and their desire to live peacefully while maintaining their traditions. He negotiated terms that protected as much of the tribe's land and resources as possible, while avoiding unnecessary conflict. The process was tense, and there were moments when it seemed that the talks might fail. But Tasunka's calm, respectful, and intelligent approach earned the respect of both the army and his people. Returning to the tribe, Tasunka faced mixed reactions. Some praised his courage and wisdom, seeing that he had avoided bloodshed while safeguarding the community. Others were skeptical, fearing that compromise might lead to loss of honor or influence over future generations. Tasanka listened to their concerns, understanding that not everyone would immediately see the value of his choice. He remained humble, knowing that leadership was a journey, not a single moment of triumph. In the weeks that followed, Tasanka worked tirelessly to ensure that the agreement was honored and that the tribe adapted to the new reality. He taught young warriors how to defend the land while maintaining peace, helped elders communicate with the settlers and missionaries, and continued learning from Father Elias to improve his ability to guide the tribe. His efforts strengthened trust and unity within the community, and slowly, the fear and uncertainty began to fade. Through this period, Tasanka also reflected deeply on his own identity. He realized that being a warrior was not just about defending the land with weapons. It was about protecting the people, preserving traditions, and navigating change with courage and wisdom. He felt pride in the fact that he could embrace knowledge without abandoning his roots. He had discovered that true strength lay in understanding, patience, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. Tasanka's choice also had effects beyond the tribe. Father Elias observed the young warrior's actions with admiration, recognizing that he had become a bridge between two worlds. The missionary saw that respect, understanding, and careful negotiation could create solutions where conflict seemed inevitable. Through Tasanka, he learned that meaningful cooperation required listening, patience, and humility. Together, they showed that two very different cultures could find common ground without losing their identities. As the seasons changed, Tasanka continued to balance his responsibilities. He hunted, protected the camp, participated in ceremonies, and guided his people with wisdom beyond his years. At the same time, he continued learning from Father Elias, preparing for the future with knowledge that could help the tribe survive and thrive. He had faced a moment that could have brought tragedy, and through courage and careful thought, he had turned it into an opportunity for protection, understanding, and hope. In quiet moments, Tasanka would sit under the stars, thinking about the choices he had made and those that were still to come. He felt the presence of his ancestors, proud of his courage, and the whisper of the wind seemed to affirm that he had chosen well. He also felt hope that his people could preserve their traditions while embracing necessary change, hope that knowledge and wisdom could guide them safely through the uncertain times ahead. Tasanka had crossed a threshold. He was no longer just a young warrior learning the ways of the tribe. He had become a leader, a bridge between worlds, and a guardian of both tradition and knowledge. His decision had not been easy, and it had not been without doubt or fear. But in the end, it had been guided by courage, patience, and the understanding that true strength was not measured only in battle, but in the ability to protect, guide, and unite. The tribe, though cautious, began to see the wisdom in his actions. They retained their land, preserved much of their culture, and began to adapt to the changes around them without losing their identity. Tasanka's leadership had shown that understanding, careful thought, and courage could prevent conflict and create opportunity. He had faced a moment that demanded choices of incredible weight, and he had risen to meet it with honor, wisdom, and a heart that held both worlds together. Years passed, and Tasanka grew into a man whose wisdom and courage were known across the plains. He was no longer the young warrior who had wondered how to balance two worlds. He had become a leader, a guide, and a protector. The choices he had made during the arrival of the army had shaped not only his own life but the future of his people. He had learned that true strength was not measured by how fast one could strike or how many battles one could win, but by the ability to understand, guide, and preserve life. The tribe had adapted to the changing world, largely because of Tasanka's guidance. They had retained their lands and their traditions, while also learning to navigate the presence of outsiders. Children learned both the sacred stories of the ancestors and the knowledge that Father Elias had shared. They could ride horses and hunt, but they could also read and write. They understood the rhythms of the plains and the lessons of the wider world. Tasanka often watched them with pride, knowing that his efforts had helped build a bridge for future generations. Tasanka himself continued to learn. He studied maps, books, and the customs of outsiders, blending these lessons with the teachings of his elders. He sought advice when needed, but also trusted his instincts and heart. He understood that leadership required balance, listening, observing, and taking action when necessary. He had faced moments that could have brought devastation, yet he had turned them into opportunities for protection and growth. His name became respected not only among the Lakota, but also among missionaries and settlers who recognized his integrity and wisdom. The story of the tribe's survival began to spread. Other communities, observing the success of the Lakota under Tasanka's guidance, sought advice on how to navigate the challenges of the changing world. Tasanka shared what he had learned, not secrets but principles. He taught that strength and courage must be paired with understanding. He explained that knowledge could be a shield, and that listening carefully to both tradition and new ideas could prevent unnecessary conflict. His words resonated, and slowly the lesson of balance spread beyond the plains. Despite his accomplishments, Tasanka remained humble. He never sought power for its own sake, nor did he act to gain fame. He focused on his people, his land, and his responsibilities. He spent time with the elders, learning from their experience. He hunted and protected the tribe, ensuring that no danger went unprepared for. He also continued to work with missionaries and settlers, maintaining relationships built on respect and mutual understanding. He had learned that cooperation did not mean submission, and that wisdom often came from unexpected sources. Tasanka also reflected on the personal journey that had brought him to this point. He remembered the first day Father Elias arrived, the quiet moments by the stream, and the lessons learned in both speech and action. He thought of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that had filled his heart, and how he had faced those emotions with patience and care. He realized that those challenges had shaped him into the leader he had become, teaching him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. As years passed, the tribe's younger generations grew under Tasanka's guidance. Children and young warriors admired his strength, respected his wisdom, and sought to learn from him. He shared stories of the past, of battles fought and survived, of traditions upheld and honored. But he also shared lessons from the wider world, the knowledge, the skills, and the ideas that could help them survive and thrive. The tribe became a community that could embrace both worlds, holding onto the sacred while learning from the new. One evening, as Tasanka sat by a fire with the young warriors, he spoke quietly. "Our people have survived because we listened, learned, and acted wisely. We honored our ancestors and respected the land, but we also opened our minds to knowledge from beyond the plains. That is what will keep our people strong now and in the future." The young warriors nodded, understanding that leadership was not about dominance, but about balance, wisdom, and courage. The elders continued to guide Tasanka, offering advice and sharing their wisdom. Even as he grew older and more respected, he never stopped listening. He knew that leadership required humility and constant learning. He honored the lessons of the past while preparing for the future, ensuring that the tribe remained strong and united in the face of change. The community thrived, preserving their culture, land, and traditions while embracing necessary knowledge from the wider world. Father Elias remained a close ally and friend. Their bond, formed in the early days of curiosity and cautious respect, had grown into a deep friendship built on trust and mutual admiration. They had learned from each other, bridging two very different worlds with patience, understanding, and care. Through Tasanka, Father Elias saw that collaboration and respect could achieve what conflict often could not. Through Father Elias, Tasunka had gained knowledge, perspective, and tools that strengthened his ability to lead. Together, they had shown that understanding and cooperation could create solutions even in the most challenging circumstances. Tasunka's influence reached beyond the immediate tribe. Settlers and other communities began to see the value of respecting traditions while sharing knowledge. They recognized that cooperation, understanding, and careful communication could prevent conflict and create opportunities for growth. Tasunka's name became known not as a conqueror or ruler, but as a wise and courageous leader who had changed the course of his people through thoughtful choices and unwavering dedication. As he grew older, Tasunka took time to reflect on his journey. He thought about the plains, the rivers, and the winds that had shaped his childhood. He remembered the elders' stories, the lessons of his parents, and the guidance of Father Elias. He realized that every choice, every lesson, and every moment of courage had contributed to the survival and growth of his people. The path had not been easy, but it had been guided by a commitment to balance, wisdom, and love for the tribe. Tasunka also considered the legacy he would leave. He wanted future generations to understand that courage alone was not enough. They needed wisdom, patience, and the ability to see beyond the immediate moment. They needed to respect the past while preparing for the future, to honor traditions while embracing knowledge that could protect and guide them. He felt a quiet pride in the young children who were learning both the sacred stories and the skills that would help them survive in a changing world. The tribe continued to thrive, their culture and identity intact, their land protected, and their people united. Tasunka's leadership had created a community that could face challenges with courage and wisdom, a community that could adapt without losing itself. The balance he had found between tradition and knowledge became a model for future generations, a reminder that understanding, patience, and careful choices could shape the destiny of a people. In his later years, Tasunka often walked the plains alone, feeling the wind on his face and listening to the whispers of the land. He watched the children play, the young warriors train, and the elders share their stories. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the choices he had made had preserved life, honor, and culture. He realized that leadership was not about glory or fame, but about service, protection, and guiding others through uncertainty. Tasunka's story became more than just his own. It became the story of a tribe that survived through courage, wisdom, and careful choices. It became the story of a people who honored their past while preparing for the future. It became the story of two worlds finding a way to understand each other, guided by a young warrior who had faced fear, uncertainty, and difficult choices with patience and strength. Even as time passed and new generations grew, the legacy of Tasunka lived on. Children learned the stories of their ancestors, the lessons of the plains, and the wisdom of knowledge from beyond their lands. They learned that true courage was measured not by battle alone, but by the choices made to protect, guide, and preserve life. They learned that strength came from understanding, humility, and careful action. And they learned that one person's courage and wisdom could change the course of history for an entire people. Tasunka, now older and wiser, watched the sun set over the plains, painting the sky with colors of gold and red. He felt the spirits of his ancestors, proud of the path he had walked. He felt the presence of the land, steady and strong as it had always been. And he felt hope, hope that the lessons he had learned, the choices he had made, and the balance he had found would continue to guide his people, now and for generations to come. Through his life, Tasunka had shown that understanding both worlds, the world of tradition and the world of knowledge, was not a betrayal, but a gift. His courage, wisdom, and dedication had created a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. Two peoples, the Lakota and the outsiders, had found a way to coexist, learn from each other, and grow stronger together. And it all began with the careful, brave choices of a young warrior who listened, learned, and acted with his heart and mind united. Tasunka's story, though shaped by hardship and uncertainty, ended not in fear or conflict, but in hope and unity. It was a story of survival, courage, wisdom, and the power of one person to change the lives of many. The plains remained, the rivers flowed, and the wind whispered the tale of a warrior whose heart held both worlds, showing that true leadership could create peace, understanding, and a future where tradition and knowledge could walk hand in hand.